I've seen some reviews that suggest the middleweight BMW GS is not as well suited for two-up touring as the larger GS. For reasons of comfort and of power. Lots of folks say if you're going two-up touring, you should get the larger bike. Is that true? You find me today on the BMW F850 GS. This is a 2023 model, but I imagine the conclusions that we draw from this would also apply to the previous model, the F800, and probably also the F900, which is the new model. Just leaving the town of Newquay, we've had a few days touring here in Cornwall, and the sun's out and there's blue sky, and Mrs. CG's on the back. So what I'm going to do in this video is share my thoughts on this journey from a rider's perspective, and also Mrs. CG has passed on a few thoughts of her own to share with you from the Pillion perspective. And spoiler alert, this bike is really good two up, but I think there's probably some caveats to that, and they all depend on the size that you are. With this being a taller bike, when you have a pillion climbing up onto the back seat, it doesn't take much to unbalance the bike, so you need to be able to be flat-footed when somebody's climbing on. And there is a little bit of an art to it, as there is with every bike, and I'm getting used to it now, but I have been very cautious on this trip to find level tarmac upon which to let my wife climb on the back, because I just don't want to lose my balance. It'd be very easy to topple the bike over, and I think that's where a shorter rider might struggle a bit. So just bear that in mind. And I think the other thing to bear in mind when it comes to size is weight. And myself and Mrs. CG equate to 320 pounds. And I'll leave it up to you discerning viewers to decide how that weight is distributed between the two of us. But 320 pounds, I would say we're not the heaviest couple in the world, and we're probably not the lightest couple in the world. And we are touring with full luggage and we're loaded up, and there is definitely a performance difference, obviously, and it does make a difference to the bike when you're loaded up like that. But I would say there's plenty of power. I haven't been thinking, I could use a bit more power at any point on this trip. So I don't think you need to go to a boxer to get the power. I mean, yeah, sure, it's nice to have the torque, but this is an 850, it's got plenty of go in it. So I don't think that's an issue at all. Obviously suspension then comes into it as well, and the comfort factor, so you need to, the size is really important. All the comments that I'm going to make are specific to our experience, and if you're wildly different in terms of height and weight, you may have a very different experience. So I just wanted to get those things out there. So I think what I'll do is I'll just start from the front of the bike to the back, talk about the various different performance aspects when you're touring two up, and throw in our opinion basically. I don't want to make this a really long video, and I haven't done a full review of this bike yet, or even my first impressions review. I literally picked this bike up on Monday and it's now Thursday, so I've spent more time riding this two up than I have one up. But I've ridden a lot of bikes, and I think this is something like my 25th bike since I passed my test. So I've got a fair idea of what it's like to go touring, and I traded in a BMW R1250 RT, which is a full-on large touring bike for this motorcycle. And that's also important to the conclusions we draw, because I think you might be quite surprised, actually. I'm loving the manoeuvrability of this bike, and I'm loving the lighter weight. It's about 70 kilos lighter than an RT, and that was important to me when changing, because I was just finding the RT a little bit tough to manage. But let's just do that front to back thing. So at the front we've got a 21-inch wheel. I've actually found that really good. The bike handles really well. When you drop it into a corner, it holds a line, and going over bumps with that slightly larger wheel, it does make a difference to the quality of the ride, so thumbs up there. Then it comes to the brakes, and anyone who's ridden one of these bikes will know what I'm talking about here, but the brakes are really good, but they don't have that initial bite. You know, you don't just gently pull the lever and suddenly the anchors are on. You really do need to be quite forceful with it, and you get used to it very quickly. So if you test ride one of these and think, oh goodness, the brakes are a little bit weird, you get used to it, it's not a problem. They're perfectly adequate for stopping. I haven't had any issues on this trip at all with that. And I think I should just say at this point, we've done plenty of riding like this on A roads. We've done dual carriageway riding, motorway riding. We've also done some really nadgery single track lanes with poor surfaces, gravel everywhere, off camber, potholes, and lanes that are so narrow if you meet something coming the other way, it will be a disaster. You know, it's been quite entertaining, shall we say. It's not the word I was using at the time, but entertaining is what we'll go with. And the bike has been impeccable, and I've been able to manage it. And I think it's also important just to say that I've lost quite a lot of weight recently, and that includes muscle tone, so my upper body strength is not where it needs to be. And I'm currently suffering a bit with my back as well. So despite all of that, I've been able to handle this bike. So I think that's just worth saying. Now in front of us, I've got a TFT Dash, and oh, here we go, chance to use the brakes. I do find I'm using a bit of back brake as well. So I was just about to say, we've got a TFT Dash here, and I think BMW are leading the way when it comes to TFT Dash. This is really clear and easy to understand. And my bike's got a mounting point for the BMW Navigator up above the TFT. Some of them have it down here on the top of the steerer, but I don't like that. I don't want to be looking down for my directions. So having it up there is good. The slight disadvantage to that is it wobbles around a bit. Although what I will say is I'm using a Garmin Zumo XT on a 3D printed adapter. So it sits a good inch, probably inch and a half proud of the actual holder there. So that's probably making the vibrations worse. Mirrors, yeah, it's not an RT, but they're pretty good. Just move your head around a bit if you need to see behind you, but it's been pretty good. I can't really see my pillion. I can see her arms and shoulders because she's sat up higher, so it's difficult to like look in the mirror and make eye contact or check she's okay. And I can't see my luggage either, which I don't like. So I don't know how you could change that, but I'm just used to that with riding the RT. But overall, it's not been a problem. And the screen in front of me, pretty good, up to sort of 60 miles an hour. Above that, and it's quite a lot of wind blast. I'm wearing an adventure style helmet, so it does tug around at that a bit, so I might get something to sort of go on the top of the screen here, but that would apply whether you're two up or just on your own. When it comes to the riding modes, this bike has all of the different modes. I think some of them just come with rain and road. I've got the dynamic mode, and that's what I've got it set in, and that just sharpens up the throttle response. And I've come off a bigger bike, so I'm used to having a fairly immediate throttle, so that's just a personal preference thing. I don't believe it's upping the power or anything if you put it in dynamic mode. I could be wrong, but it certainly feels more responsive to me, and I'd rather control it with my right hand than have the computer doing it. Now when you put this bike into dynamic mode, it will also put the suspension into dynamic mode, but you can change that. So you press the spring button here on the left hand cluster, and down there you can see I've changed my setting to road, which is just a bit more comfortable, and I've found the handling is superb, so I've got no reason to change that. So dynamic throttle, road mode for comfort. Now incidentally, we've also got on that menu, if you actually hold the spring button down, you can cycle through the preload, and you can probably just see there I've got the 2 helmet setting. I'll just open that up again, see you've got spring and 2 helmets, so that's the 2 rider preload. The other options are single helmet, so it's just a rider, helmet plus luggage, so rider with luggage. So you basically have 3 settings. So I've got it on the maximum preload, and that has been really good for us on the trip. I've missed the headlight. I should have spoken about the headlight as I'm doing my front to back. We rode home last night, or back to the accommodation, sorry, in the dark. And I can say, of the 25 bikes or so that I've owned, this one has the best headlight, and it's not even close. The RT that I had didn't have the LED headlight, so it wasn't particularly bright, but I did have the optional spotlights, so when you switch those on, yeah, that bike was pretty good in the dark. But this has just got a headlight, and it's great, and the high beam is great. No problems at all on unfamiliar roads. And we're joining the dual carriageway here, but I'm not going to speed up massively because I don't want the wind noise to mess up the audio. And it's a beautiful day, I'm just taking it easy, which is what we've been doing for most of the trip. I don't think if you go 2 up on a bike like this, you're going to be hooning it at any point. This windscreen here is actually adjustable. There's a lever here, it's in its uppermost setting at the moment. I don't think I'd ever bother having it in the lower setting, given my height. I could do with it being slightly taller, so I might get a taller screen to fit whenever I go touring, or like I say, just try and get a deflector for the top of it. Let's get on the main A30 and let's talk about the seat. Now this bike has quite a few options fitted to it. This one is the Trophy Edition, or TE. It's got the electronic suspension, obviously, as I just mentioned. Of course, not all of these bikes have the electronic suspension. Some of them have a manual preload adjustment, etc. In which case, obviously, you'd adjust your suspension slightly differently. This one has pretty much all the toys on it, and it's been upgraded with a comfort seat. And yeah, again, I've got to say, 25 bikes, this one has got the best seat. And it's not even close again. It's really comfortable. Now obviously, as I said, this is the comfort seat, which is a cost option, and I haven't tried the standard seat, so I can't comment on how comfortable the standard one is, or whether or not it's a worthwhile upgrade. But all I can say is it's a really comfortable seat. Now let me give you some of Mrs. CG's feedback. So what you need to know about her is that she has a bad back. So she does suffer a little bit with sitting for long periods. And we would go riding on the RT, which is a bigger bike, much bigger back seat, bigger backrest with the huge top box and all the rest of it, heated seat, and you'd think that bike would be more comfortable. But we actually found that she was getting off the bike, even after fairly short rides, and she was very uncomfortable. So I acquired an air bubble seat attachment, so it's sort of like something you strap to the seat and you blow it up, and then you kind of sit on it and release the valve to get just the right kind of relief. And I actually used that on my recent trip to Spain. I did 1,500 miles with it, and I have to say it made a huge difference to my comfort, so it's definitely helping her. And because we were slightly late leaving for this trip, I didn't get time to fit it to the seat of this bike. And I just thought, well, we'll chuck it in the side case and we'll deal with that when we stop. And as it happens, it's not been on the whole trip. And she's completely comfortable and getting off the bike with minimal discomfort. And in her own words, this is the most comfortable she's been on a bike. And I think that's quite a statement, because when you look at the side of the bike, particularly when you've got the side cases on, the distance from the side case to the pillion peg, it's not very much, so there's not much in the way of foot adjustment. Obviously coming off the RT, you've got a lot of space around, so there's a big gap between you and the pillion. We're much closer together. I have no complaints on that front. And the backrest doesn't look like it's going to be as comfortable. Now she has said it's taken a bit of getting used to, because the sitting position feels a bit odd to her. But as the trip has progressed, she's gotten used to that position and seems perfectly happy with it now. So that's good. Talking about foot pegs, another option that this bike has got is the Enduro metal pegs for the rider. And I'm not sure I'm going to keep these on. I think I'll probably change them for a standard rubber topped peg, because I can't move my feet on it. They kind of grip the boots and lock your feet in position, so I'm finding I'm having to work around that a little bit. I'm not likely to ever take this bike seriously off-road where I'm going to need that kind of pedal, so I might just take those off and sell them and get some others. That said, it's not really been a massive problem. Obviously they are bigger and slightly more bulky, and there's not a lot of room to the side of the bike, so when you're sort of paddling at junctions, it catches your leg on the pedals, so I've not been quite so keen on that, but I think just changing the pegs will make a huge difference, so I'll probably do that. fuel tank, let's just quickly talk about the range here. And I can't remember exactly how many litres the tank contains, so I'll look that up and put that up on screen. What I can tell you is that the reserve light comes on after about 150 miles from brimming the tank, and I reckon there's a good 50 miles left after that. So I rode another 25 miles or so, and the range seemed to drop in line with the mileage I was riding. So I think you're probably good for 180 miles between fill-ups. If you want to be on the safe side, you could probably push it to 200 if you're riding more gently. I think that's good enough for pretty much any tour, because you're going to want to stop and rest, especially if you're two up. You're not likely to do all of that in one sitting, so yeah, it's good enough. So we're in 6th gear at the moment, and we're going up a hill at 65 miles per hour. What I'm going to do is just do a quick roll-on test. So if I just open the throttle, and you can see it's not like an immediate pickup. Let's have another go. If you want the top performance, you might have to drop a cog or two, but that's with 2 of us on and full luggage, you know, it's fine. Just yeah, hopefully that's helpful in understanding what the performance is like. And here we go into a more straight bit. Let me just slow down a bit and I'll drop down to 4th gear. Okay, 4th gear, let's get down to that 60. Let's crack it open. So as you can see, that's plenty of performance, and it's got plenty more go in it yet. So even 2 up, the 850 engine is fine. You might just have to work the gears a bit. So let's talk about luggage. Now this bike didn't have luggage originally, so it's a year old, and the previous owner didn't bother putting luggage on, so I bought new luggage to go with it, and I chose the Vario luggage. Now this is absolutely amazing, this stuff. Let me show you how this works. So both of the side cases and the top box have got this lever system. So if you find your bag doesn't quite fit into the side case or whatever, you just pull this lever, it extends the case, so you get a bit more space. And I think that's just brilliant, because it means you can keep the luggage on the bike in a kind of low profile mode, so you get less wind resistance from it, and it looks a bit cooler. And you've got the flexibility then. So if you're able to pack up with it in the non-extended mode, it means you've got a bit of space to bring some souvenirs home with you from a tour or whatever. Or if you're travelling to the continent, sneak a bottle of wine in or something. Very nice. Look at that. A Capri from Germany. 3 litre S. Very nice. I do like a full Capri. The other great thing about it is that there are mounting points on the bike for the luggage. So when you take the side cases off, it doesn't leave a scaffolding behind, which other bikes do. And I hate that. I absolutely hate it. I hated it on my V850 TT. You take the cases off just to go and ride the bike, and you've always got this framework left on the bike. And I don't understand why more manufacturers can't do what BMW have done here. And I don't think the Vario luggage is unique to BMW either. I've got a funny feeling that you can have the same stuff on the Honda Africa Twin. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there, but I'm sure a friend of mine who's got an Africa Twin, I'm sure he's got a Vario top box. So yeah, luggage was not cheap. Never is. Seems all of the manufacturers have kind of colluded, and whatever you go for, a set of luggage, 2 side cases and a top box is going to run you about 1,500 quid, it seems. But it makes a huge difference when you're going away. I mean, other options are available, of course, aftermarket options that are much cheaper, but again, you're back to the whole having a scaffold or a framework on the back of the bike. And I think this is a good looking bike if you like adventure looking bikes. I think it's a good looking bike, and it spoils the look if you've got a load of framework. Sometimes I want to take the cases off and enjoy the bike in a more naked format, and I think that makes the bike much more usable as well. You're going to be more inclined to take it out for a Sunday scratch, because it looks better without the cases on. Just my opinion, of course. Now, I did think that the cases were going to be silver, and when I turned up to the dealership and they were black, I was quite upset. disappointing because it wasn't what I ordered. And the sales guy was sort of saying, but black looks better. And apparently if you order the cases for the F850, they only come in black. There is no option to order silver, but it's exactly the same luggage as on the 1250 or 1300, whatever it is. So you could order that and get it in silver, which is what they were going to do for me. But actually, when I got the bike home, and I'm looking at it, and the back of the bike is kind of black in finish, and I just thought, actually, you know, the black cases finish it off quite nicely. So I called him back and said, yeah, don't worry about it. So they got off the hook there, but really they should have called me to say it's not silver, it's going to be black, and check that I was okay with that, but they didn't. Anyway, all's well that ends well. I'm happy with what I've got, and there's another benefit I think with having the black case, and that is you end up scuffing the things with your boots, don't you, when a pillion climbs on, or when you're swinging your leg back over. As someone in my 40s, I'm not as flexible as I used to be, so occasionally I do struggle getting the leg over the bike. If you've got a silver case, then the black rubber from your boots is going to show up a bit more. So yeah, I think black is a good choice actually, all things considered. And I think the final thing I then just need to talk about is how the cases and that short distance to the pillion peg does make it a little bit more difficult for your pillion to climb on. And you really want them to be able to climb on in a fairly smooth motion, don't you, so that you're not balancing the bike for too long. And that's quite challenging when you haven't got a lot of room to play with. I have to say Mrs. CG's got very good at doing that now, and we've been managing just fine. So the final conclusion that I would give to you is don't always listen to what people are saying in reviews. Don't even listen to me, I guess. Go and try it for yourself, because different sizes and weights matter. Our perceptions and what we've ridden before is going to impact how we feel about something. Do you need to buy the big boxer to go touring? Absolutely not. You can go 2-up on an F850 GS. And actually I think it's a really good bike for 2-up touring. It's incredibly comfortable. The riding position is really good for me as a rider. I'm not finding that I'm putting any extra energy into manoeuvring the bike. These nice wide bars make it really easy. And my wife is really comfortable on the back. And we're actually really excited, especially her, because this is just opening up longer trips for us. And that's great. It's what we wanted a touring bike for in the first place. When we bought the R1250 RT, because our children are getting older and independent, driving for themselves, and we wanted to have something we could go and do together, and I think that's really important. In fairness, we just haven't really been able to do any decent trips on the RT together in the 18 months or so that we owned it. I've been through France and Spain on it, and back to Spain again this year. I've been up to Scotland on it, and it's a great bike. I absolutely loved it, and I'm gutted to see it go. And I was quite nervous picking this bike up, just thinking we were going to have really compromised. And it very quickly, you know, within 30-40 miles of setting off on this trip, I realised actually this might just be a better touring bike for us. Thinking about the lanes and things that we've been down to get to our accommodation, which was in the middle of nowhere, trying to do that on a big R1250 RT, yeah, no thanks, not for me. But others out there might not have a problem. You might have a bit more upper body strength than me, or a better rider than me, and you're happy with that larger bike. I think though, for many people, you really don't need more than a middleweight bike. Why spend all the extra money to have the big one, when this one is just as good really in terms of the experience that you're going to have. And a bike like this, an adventure bike, it's more about the experience than the bike. It's about where it takes you and the adventures that you have on it. And I think that's what touring is about. So if you've got a bike that can open up those opportunities for you, that's a good thing. So I think go and test ride one, or at least sit on it if you're planning to go 2-up. When we bought this bike, I got a test ride on it, but they didn't have insurance to cover pillions on test rides. But we did still sit on it together, and practice getting on and off, manoeuvring the bike. We did a few of those things at the dealership. And you know, I can be a bit gung-ho when it comes to buying bikes. I bought a few mail order without test riding at all. And that's probably not a wise thing to do when you've got somebody else's comfort to consider as well. So for a touring bike, you definitely need to go and sit on it and try it out for yourself and see whether it works for you. But I wouldn't be put off by the lesser power of a smaller engine like the 850 or now the 900. And I don't think the comfort argument stands up either. And a smaller, lighter bike enables you to do more. Not that this is hugely lighter than the bigger Boxer, but it does make a difference. And I should say also, this bike doesn't have any ironmongery on it. I haven't got any frame protectors or anything like that, and all of that stuff of course adds to the weight, so that's a conscious decision by me, and I'll just have to live in fear of dropping it. And that's probably one thing actually where the Boxer has an advantage, because if you drop a Boxer, it's going to rest on the cylinder head. You can replace those covers, as I found out with my RT, but that means the bike will sit at a bit of an angle. You'll be able to maybe push it up a bit easier. This one of course is a parallel twin, so it would lie flat, so you don't have that advantage. So that's a pretty extreme situation though, isn't it? Buying a bike on the basis of whether you can pick it up after you've dropped it. I think it'd be better to buy the bike on the basis of whether or not you think you will drop it. I think I probably said as much as I need to say. I think I've answered the question for myself anyway, and maybe it's been helpful for you as well. Hopefully it has, and if so, why not consider supporting the channel with a hit of that subscribe button and a like. I will be doing a first impressions video on this bike, and once I've got a few more miles under me, maybe a couple thousand, I'll do a full review. I think I'd like to do a few more trips first. But I'm confident in the opinions that we've passed on with regards to two-up touring, even though the bike is new to us. I've got a lot of experience with different types of bikes. Mrs. CG's been on the back of a few of them, so she knows what she's talking about as well. And we're both comfortable and enjoying the ride. It's been a great trip. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy the rest of the ride home. And thanks for watching. See you next time. CG Rides.